morning. Shardvixen here. Alright, so this is my topic 1, brain food. What I've been doing in brain food is the history's list of greatest mysteries. Though most of them are not really mysteries anymore. That's the case, I mean, it's a mystery because sometimes there's things about it that can't be explained because of the time period it occurred. There's no way to explain it. We can make logical guess, and that's it. So the one we're going to do today is the ghost blimp. So, excuse me. I'll probably be coughing off and on. I've been having what I call a pinch in my lungs. I've had it since I was a child. It comes off and on. I'll get like a cold in my lungs, and it's just like you want to cough, but there's no cough there because it catches when you breathe. It like pinches. That's all. And I've been to see the doctors since I was a child for it, and they just you just have a cold in your lungs, or you're asthmatic, or things like that. So it's probably that the asthma that I do have is just being bothersome, and I don't take medications or breather for it. I just breathe deeper because I'm a shallow breather. So if I cough, I apologize. Anyway, so the ghost blimp. So I'm going to read it. You know how this works. I have to read it because, well, I don't have these memorized. And actually, this won't be a conversation per se about the ghost blimp because I don't see it as a mystery in the same way that other people might see it. Because I kind of think there's a guy, somebody posted on Reddit this year about it, because there's websites and all kinds of things about the ghost blimp, of people deciding what happened and didn't happen and blah blah blah. It's a lot like a lot of these mysteries. They're not mysteries in the sense that like I think of a mystery or a puzzle, but more of you just can't prove what probably logically happened, so therefore they're considered a mystery. So here it goes. I gotta get my glasses. I'm sorry. I have them here. Well, I have a set of glasses, not my reading glasses, but I have the dollar store glasses, which, as a fox, they look very funny on me. Woo-hoo-hoo. Okay, so this is number 47 in our 50 list, so we're not tracking along here, and I'm going to start adding different things in because some of these are silly and some of them aren't. Anyway, I think it's just good to know these things that were considered a mystery in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s before the age of the internet, and I mean they're still technically mysteries. You'll see what I mean. Anyway, the ghost blimp. August 16, 1942, a U.S. Navy blimp crewed by Ernest Cody and Charles Adams prepared for takeoff from San Francisco Bay in search of the Japanese enemy submarines. An hour into the flight, the pair radioed to say they were going to examine a possible oil spill. The blimp was next seen crash-landed in Daly City with no sign of its crew. Cody and Adams were never seen again. All right, so the little briefness that they put on that is it's about Cody and Adams is the reason for the mystery, because no one is quite sure where they went. Now, like I said, sorry, you're seeing my head a lot. So, one of the things on Reddit is that they believe somebody wrote a thing saying that they believe they just fell out of the blimp, which seems kind of, I would see that. But then because they fell out in the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, they weren't seen again because nobody knew they were off of it until it landed. So it's not like they could go out searching for them. But they did go looking for them, and they found nothing about them. But there is a channel, there is a website, a really good one, which you're going to see me leaning towards my computer a lot, on historynet.com. And they talk about, you can just type in the mystery of the ghost blimp or just put ghost blimp. And so it was early morning of Sunday, August 16th, 1942. U.S. Navy blimp prepared to take off from Treasure Island in San Francisco Bay to search for enemy submarines. That was a real thing for those of you too young to know or have not really paid attention to your history. you think about it, it was only 20 years before I was born. Well, actually, more than 20 years because I was born in the 60s. But that was a scary time for a lot of people. A lot of bad things happen in our country. Internment camps, people being fearful of Japanese people, angry at German people, all kinds of stuff. And I'm not, simplifying it. I'm just saying that was a time period of all kinds of stuff going on. The United States had entered World War II only 9 months earlier, but Japanese subs had sunk at least half a dozen Allied ships off the American West Coast. Now, I don't know if you guys are into parodies and stuff, but there's a movie called 1942. I think that's what it's called. I'll have to look it up, and I'll let you know for sure. In which it talks about the fear of submarines off the coast and the airplanes coming and everything. I want to say it's Chevy Chase, but I'm not positive. Hang on. Okay, so the name of the movie is 1941. It's John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, Ned Beatty, Lorraine Gary, Murray Hamplin, Christopher Lee. It has a lot of people in it. And it talks about how they're all really fearful that the Japanese are coming in. It's that whole period of time, right? Before 1942. It's a pretty funny movie, but it is 80s kind of humor. I think that it came out in 1979. So it's, that 1979 Ghostbustery style stuff. It's written by director. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. So if you get a chance, go and take a look at it. I'm sure it's not politically correct, being that came from the 70s. There are a lot of movies that aren't very politically correct. So, but it kind of sits on the fear of hysterical Californians prepare for a Japanese invasion in the days after Pearl Harbor. So it shows you people being really. Anyway. That was that kind of a tangently thing that we do every once in a while. But that kind of gives you that idea. So that's why they were searching also, because, like it said, submarines had been, seen and bombed and stuff. So they sent out this U.S. Navy blimp to go and check it out. The Blimp's mission was to locate, sink any Japanese subs its crew spotted off of San Francisco. And it was loaded. As a result, the L-8, which is the Blimp, carried two 325-pound Mark 17 death bombs mounted on an external rack, a 30 caliber machine gun, and 30 rounds of ammunition. I have a hard time with that word, you know that. And if you go to history.net, you'll see pictures of what the Blimp looked like, right? So L8 lifted off from Treasure Island with Cody at the controls. Winds were light and variable at 4 knots per hour with a ceiling of 800 to 1,000 feet. The day was slightly overcast, but visibility was good at 3 to 5 miles. Cody could even see the towers of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. So that kind of, if you know what Golden Gate is, you know where they were at. The L8's mission was to patrol within a 50-mile radius of San Francisco. Once Cody passed over the Golden Gate, he headed southwest towards Farallon Islands. At 7:38 a.m., an hour and a half into the patrol, he radioed L8's position as 4 miles east of the Farallones. 4 minutes later, he sent a second message: "I'm investigating suspicious oil slick. Stand by." An oil slick could indicate an enemy sub lurking below the waves, so it's not surprising that the LA dropped 2 Mark 4 float lights, a smoke-producing flare shaped like an aerial bomb, at 7:42 a.m. and began scrutinizing the area. Okay, all exciting history stuff, right? When the Liberty ship Albert Gallatin spotted L8 smoke flares, its crew sounded the general alarm and manned its guns. Sailors from the nearby fishing trawler Daisy Gray, worried that the Blimp was about to depth charge enemy subs, pulled in its nets. But no bombs were dropped. Instead, L8 circled the area for more than an hour. The Blimp was close enough to Daisy Gray that the trawler's first mate could make out 2 men in the gondola, one of them with dark hair. Though L8's identification had been removed from its outer envelope, it was still painted on the control cabin. Besides, there was no mistaking a Blimp of this type. If you see it, you know what it was. So, as Daisy Gray's and Gallatin's crews watched through the binoculars, the blimp circled at 200 to 300 feet, at one point descending to 300 above the waves, as if its crew wanted a closer look at something. Then, shortly after 9 a.m., Love 8 dropped ballast, rose, and headed back towards San Francisco. Since blimps regularly patrolled the California coast, nobody thought L8's movements seemed unusual, but that was the last time Cody and Adams were ever seen alive. Were ever seen or heard from. Sorry. Let's not paraphrase that, right? Okay, so L8 had broadcast its last message at 7:42 before circling the oil slick. After that, Wing Control tried to re-establish radio control without success. Squadron headquarters wasn't told of the blimp's radio silence until 8:20, but it wasn't unusual for blimps to lose contact during patrol. Besides, Cody and Adams had more than enough fuel to return to base. But when L8 still hadn't responded by 8:50, two Vox OS-2Us Kingfisher float planes were sent to search for the blimp. Other aircraft in the area were also alerted to be on the lookout. The next indication of L8's whereabouts came at 10:45 when a Pan American Clipper pilot reported seeing the blimp over Golden Gate Bridge. He spotted nothing wrong with the ship, which appeared to be under control and heading back to base. At 11, one of the Kingfishers reported seeing L8 3 miles west of Saladao Beach, raising through the overcast at 2,000 feet. So you had people that said they seen the blimp, so everything was cool. A few minutes later, the blimp began to descend, disappearing in the clouds. Nothing indicated that L8 was not in control flight, but 2,000 feet was close to the blimp's pressure height, the altitude where its valves would automatically open and vent helium to prevent its gas cells from bursting. Normally, the crewman would have avoided surpassing pressure height, but for some reason they had apparently ignored this restriction. Unless, of course, they weren't on the blimp at that time. Next to site L8 was an Army P-38 pilot who spotted the blimp near Mile Rock. He noticed nothing amiss, assuming it was headed to Treasure Island. You know, they say there was nothing amiss, but nobody says that they seen people in it. So I guess nothing amiss means there was nobody in it, and that was it. A few minutes later, Richard Quam, an off-duty seaman headed for a day at the beach, was driving along coastal highway between San Mateo to San Francisco when he spotted L8 in the distance and noticed that the blimp was bent in the middle. Quam stopped to snap a photograph. His film would soon be confiscated by the authorities. At approximately 11:15 a.m., 5 hours after L8 left Treasure Island, the blimp approached the shore at Ocean Beach in San Francisco, about a mile south of Fort Funston. A solitary bather noticed the blimp hanging 50 feet offshore, its motors silenced. L8's bag was sagging noticeably as it moved broadside to the wind, only 50 feet above the water. The blimp touched down briefly on the beach, then moved inland until the gondola hit the side of a hill, packing the starboard engine with dirt and leaves and bending its propellers. The blow also knocked one of the depth charges loose, which rolled downhill before coming to a stop. Suddenly, free 325 pounds, L8 then rose, cleared the embankment, and disappeared from sight. So obviously, at that point, there were nobody in it, or they were dead. That was the only two options you got there. Unconscious. 3 options, right? So they were gone before, I'm thinking, before it went up high. Remember, it went up high, and it's not supposed to, so it probably went up high, popped itself, and then started to descend back down. I mean, that's the logical thinking, correct? We have to follow it by logical thinking. Sunday morning, golfers at San Francisco exclusive Olympic Club stopped to watch the blimp limp by overhead. They probably didn't realize that the remaining depth charge could only be detonated by water pressure, which is why they gave it a wide berth. One club member reported having seen a parachute descending from L8 while the blimp was still offshore, and he wasn't the only one to see something of the crew. Now, that's where this starts to become the mystery, right? So you have the logical stuff was that something happened to them while they were at the ocean, like they fell off or something, or got knocked out or whatever, and they went up too high or panicked or whatever, and they went up too high, and then it popped, and then it descended back down. But the whole fact that then people say they saw a parachute kind of changes that aspect. 17-year-old C.E. Taylor told San Francisco Call Bulletin, I put my binoculars on and could see figures inside the cabinet. By that time, thousands of people were watching the derelict blimp float inland. Members of the Daly City Fire Department, who were burning brush on a nearby hill, gave chase, and soon joined by local police, Good Samaritans, and what was described as a posse of looky-loos, which is a term that my grandfather used to use a lot. L8 then descended towards Daly City, a suburban 2 blocks south of San Francisco's county line, striking the roofs of several homes. Ethel Appleton heard the blimp's drag line scrape across a rooftop and instinctively grabbed her 8-year-old daughter, concerned for their safety. When Richard L. Johnson, who was polishing his car in front of his house, noticed the partly deflated blimp overhead, he rushed to protect his mother. At 11:30 a.m., LA-8 came to a rest in the middle of a 400 block of Bellevue Avenue. You couldn't have lifted it down any easier than it dropped on Bellevue, said Deputy Marshal Sean Wood of Daly City's fire department. Well, not exactly. Of course not. The blimp's cabin actually nosed into a utility pole in front of the Johnson home, breaking off a crossarm. The force of the collision swung the blimp's tail into the electrical wires, sending a shower of sparks to the ground. Fortunately, L8's fuel supply didn't ignite, but the blimp's envelope was punctured and the airship slid to the ground tail first, slowly deflating atop of Johnson's freshly waxed car. And the L8's radio was perfect working order. An inspection soon revealed that all 3 of the L8's parachutes were still on board. So those people saying they saw parachutes had lied, along with a single life raft. 2 of the blimp's 5 smoke bombs were missing, but those were accounted for because the crew had used them to mark the oil slick. A briefcase containing classified materials found behind the pilot seat. L8's engines were in perfect working order. The ignition switches were on and the blimp's instruments and flight controls operated normally, with 4 hours of gas remaining in the fuel tank. In other words, there was nothing whatsoever wrong with L8 except that it lacked a crew. True, 2 of the 3 life jackets carried on board were missing, but regulations required that Cody and Adams wear the life jackets while patrolling over the water. It's not surprising they would disappear with all the men, right? So they were wearing them and they fell out. That's probably the most nothing. The only thing slightly strange was that the blimp's batteries were drained and part of the fuel had been dumped. Normally a blimp wouldn't dump fuel unless it needed to increase buoyancy in a hurry. Since L8 didn't seem to have that need, it wasn't clear why the fuel had been lost and its engines idled. The U.S. Army immediately launched an extensive search for the 2 missing men. Now, they didn't find them. It was obvious. I mean, for 3 days they looked for them, but they didn't find them. And despite of calm seas and good visibility, there was no sight of Cody or Adams. But it is very hard to find something in a very big area if you don't know where to start looking. And with the ocean and the current waves and all that stuff, that would be hard to find anyway. Asked whether the L8 could have been attacked by the enemy, a Navy spokesman responded, that's very remote. Nothing the Navy knows now has given a satisfactory explanation of what happened. That was at that time period. Like I said, though, people have their own theories and everything. So despite calling 35 witnesses, the inquiry could find no answers to the most basic questions. Why did Cody and Adam stop broadcasting if their radio was working? What caused the 2 men to leave the ship in mid-flight? And what happened between the time they spotted the oil slick off the Farallones on 7:40 a.m. and the point where the L8 came ashore at Ocean Beach around 11:15 a.m.? So it's like 2.5 hours. Nobody knows. So there's still lots of theories. So here's the theories. Theories abound as to why Cody and Adams vanished. They were captured by a Japanese sub. They were spying for Japan and rendezvoused with an I-boat to escape. A stowaway had overpowered the two men and then somehow vanished as well. Their disappearance was an AWOL scheme gone awry. One crewman murdered the other over a woman, dumped his body, then fell overboard himself. A rogue wave swept both men away. L8 was temporarily dipped into the ocean, washing away both men. And the favorite, of course, is that Cody and Adams were abducted by aliens about the time they went up into the sky, which, you know, if you believe in aliens, that makes perfect sense. If you don't, then, of course, it wouldn't make perfect sense, would it? Okay, so, the most puzzling thing to the investigators was why L8's crew failed to broadcast a radio mission after sighting the oil slick at 7:42 a.m. And if one of the crew had fallen into the cabin while investigating the oil slick, had fallen from the cabin, why didn't the other man radio for help? If both men were still on board when L8 headed back to San Francisco around 9 a.m., what led to their disappearance later? So there's a guy named Otto Gross who has been researching the disappearance of L8's crew since 2009, believes he found the answer. Gross's theory, detailed at his website, ghostblimp.com, is that the blimp had been secretly testing experimental radar, and the poorly shielded microwaves overpowered the men, causing them to tumble out of the cabin. Gross's claim is speculative, however, since no hard proof has been uncovered that L8 was testing experimental equipment on the doomed flight. Whatever caused the loss of Cody and Adams probably occurred between their last radio broadcast and when Pan Am crewman spotted the blimp above the pressure height at 10:20 a.m. As the Navy's Board of Inquiry concluded, careful analysis of evidence includes no reason for voluntary abandonment of airship. The board therefore believes the abandonment was involuntary. Like they passed out and fell over. That would probably be a thing. So, I mean, the thing that I thought was interesting about this, and if you go to that site, there's a whole bunch, a lot of other stuff. What they did, one of the things they did find is that there may have been issues with the safety latch on L8's door. So it's possible that the fastening came off somewhere in the middle of it and accidentally permitted the passenger to fall out. Failure to use the radio and the life raft might indicate that the pilot hoped to recover his passenger very quickly. The fact that both engines were stopped might be explained by the pilot's attempt to slow the airship while heading into a very light breeze. The open door latched full forward, and the microphone radio headset hanging out the door lend credence to this theory. In such an attempt, the pilot himself had gone overboard. No accurate explanation offers itself to the abandonment of the airworthy airship. So, one of the things that's kind of interesting to me, though, so the blimp goes on to be used again after they fix the little door. But the thing that I think is the most interesting about this, and it's caused me to do research in other things over time, is how easy it is for a person to disappear. So this leads to, so I believe that they fell out. That's what I think. We can't prove it. We're never going to be able to prove it. There's no way to prove it in any shape or form. They're just not. I mean, something happened. They fell over. That's it. That's all we can say. Unless they didn't come out any other place, because the parachutes are still there. But one of the things is that there's a guy who, so this is a little different, but it's about people vanishing. So there's a guy, his name is John Billman, who's an acclaimed journalist, author, and professor, who just released a book last year, July 2020, about the cold vanish, seeking the missing in Americans' wildlands. And it said he also did an article of how 1,600 people went missing. 1,600 people went missing from our public lands without a trace. I find it interesting that people just disappear. And nobody ever sees them again. There's no, and then or some they do find again, but they're dead, and they're like they're either they're in some strange places. A lot of them sometimes are people who are harming themselves. Other people, people who suffer from mental health issues, people who are kidnapped. And then just people who just disappear. Nobody knows why. So I find it interesting about that. One of the things that this guy made a statement, another guy made a statement about reviewing this book, is how long would it take somebody to figure out you had disappeared, and how would they find you? Like, what would you do if you ended up being lost in the woods, and how would you get out, and how you went in there? So it's just puzzling to me about people who disappear, because a lot of times when you go to talk to the witnesses who talked to them last, everybody's like, oh, everything was fine. They just, one minute they're there and the next they're not. No one can make any heads or tails as to what happened. Anyway, so that's the end of that, because, it's only a mystery. If we believe in aliens, the aliens took them. But it's only a mystery because we can't solve what happened to them. We can only speculate and have theories about it, and take the most plausible one that works best, that fills in all the holes. And I mean, being abducted by aliens in the clouds actually would work. You could fill in all the blanks, but you have to believe in aliens first. All right, so that's it for that one. My next vlog will be Rambling 101, of course, and then we go back around to Know Thyself. If at some point there isn't a vlog for me, like I said, that either means I'm just sick or I got busy with doing other stuff, because on Fridays I do animation as well, and sometimes I get very involved with drawing and coloring that I forget that I need to do the vlog. Anyway, thank you for showing up. If you did, make a comment down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye.